Hello, it's Jamie J. I'm the CEO and founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistance. This is Live with Bottleneck, where we help stop the bottleneck in your business. And I'm talking to Dr. Caroline Brookfield today, and I'm pretty excited about this conversation. And you'll see here, as soon as we dive into it after this intro, we're going to be talking about creativity, the number one skill you need that you already have. Interesting. Without any further ado, though, let me go ahead and get this. I just think it's a gorgeous intro that we call Magic Mike. Mike D, our video editor, did. We'll go ahead and play the intro, and we'll be back in 38 seconds. Hello, it's Jamie J, CEO and founder of Live with Bottleneck Distant Assistance. This is Live with Bottleneck. It's a special live stream we bring you every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we bring on unbelievably and talented business minds to help you stop the bottleneck in your business. And today is, I'm really excited to bring on Dr. Caroline Brookfield. We're going to be talking about creativity, the number one skill that you already have. She's a speaker and a veterinarian of artful science. And why, oh, why is Dr. Brookfield going to help you stop the bottleneck with your business? Well, let me tell you. Caroline believes that if everyone took small, unconventional actions to embrace their inherent creativity, we would change the world. Trained as a veterinarian and researcher, she delights in using data and immersive experiences to convince the most reluctant creative. She is always up for a challenge, like stand-up comedy, learning guitar, rock climbing, getting her kids to eat vegetables, surfing, meditation retreats with sniper rifles. You know, the usual stuff. A late diagnosis of ADHD, what? Squirrel. What? Explains her deep distaste for irrelevant and pointless drivel. She's a lot of fun at a party, an ideation meeting, or a strategy session, but not so much at pointless meetings that go nowhere. Caroline holds her vet degree from the Ontario Veterinary College. She's a level 2 creative problem-solving facilitator and holds a certificate of professional management from the University of Calgary, or Calgary, as I've heard it pronounced by some, where she lives. Her lectures go unheeded by her family. The dog listens sometimes. I love it. Without any further ado, please allow me to introduce you to Dr. Caroline Brookfield. Hello.
Hello, Jamie. How are you?
I am wonderful. I love that. All of that kind of, little step away with some sniper rifles. The dog listens sometimes. I love it.
If I have a treat, she does.
A treat, or thank goodness for leashes. That's fantastic. Well, I let everyone know a little bit more about you. And by the way, if you're watching this live, I know most of you watch this as a replay, but if you're watching this live and you have a question for Dr. Brookfield, please ask away, whether you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube or Facebook. Don't be afraid. We're not going to bite. Ask your questions, or if you have a suggestion or you just want to leave a comment, by all means do so. We appreciate the interaction. Other than that, Dr. Brookfield, I wonder if you want to give us a little bit more about what's going on in your world and what's happening, and maybe a little background or what you're up to right now.
Sure. Well, call me Caroline for one thing. I don't know. After 24 years, I still feel like it's so formal to be addressed as doctor. What's going on in my world? Well, the pandemic hit in the middle of public speaking career. So that was a bit of a derail attempt for my public speaking, but it's been great because I've been connected with so many people around the world that I wouldn't have otherwise connected with. And I took the time to write a book. So I'm in the middle of writing a book and taking that risk and taking that chance to be creative and put out that information to the world, and hopefully people will find it helpful.
Well, I'm really excited. So it is The Reluctant Creative. Is that a working title, or is that the title you think you've landed on?
It's a working title right now. I mean, I've never written a book before. I know nothing about writing books. I'm totally flying by the seat of my pants. So I'm tentatively calling it The Reluctant Creative. And I think something to do with the 5 habits you can use every day and a few minutes a day to engage your creativity, the number one skill you need that you already have. And that's way too long, so I know I need to cut it, but you know, I'm just taking it a day at a time and going from there.
Yeah, you know what? I think a great exercise, because I've never written a book before. Right now, I'm writing one as well, and so, you know, the publisher said, just dump, just write it. Doesn't need to be. Just get it out there. Get the words on paper. We'll worry about fixing it up later. And I was like, okay.
Oh, you got a publisher. I don't even have a publisher. I'm like literally just writing the book, and we'll see what happens.
You know what? Good for you. Kudos. I'm not good enough to do that without somebody pushing me, because oh man, writing is a painful.
That's why it's taking so long, right? Like that I don't have a deadline, so that self-motivation is harder for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I bet. So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more. I wonder if we could just kick it right off and talk about creativity. What is that number one skill you need that you already have? I'd love to learn what that is, and then we can just kind of riff on that.
Sure. Well, it's funny because when I got interested in creativity, I did what I did as a researcher and veterinarian. I went to peer-reviewed journals and, you know, spent weeks of my life reading research articles. And what I found fascinating is creativity researchers even define creativity differently. So some researchers say creativity has to be something novel and original and approved by others in their domain as novel and useful. Ruth Richards was one of the early pioneers of the sense of everyday creativity, which is what I speak about. So when you're sitting down, Jamie, when you're sitting down to write your book, it's the same stuff going on in your brain as when Picasso was going to paint a picture. Like it's the same neurologic process, it's just a different medium. And if we can engage that creativity every day, whether it's writing a blog post or choosing an outfit, you know, or choosing what you're going to make for dinner, those are all everyday creative outputs that can give you the same type of benefits long term.
So what are some of the benefits long term?
Oh, it's, you know, and this is the hardest thing for my speaking, because I'm supposed to, you know, as a speaker, you have to say, what can I do for a company and speak in outcomes? I'm like, there's too many outcomes. They're all so exciting. So in the research, and this is all data proven, creativity makes you happier. If you do something creative today, you are happier the next day. And when you're happier, you want to create more. So it's this like infinity donut, I call it, which sounds really delicious too.
It sure does.
Of like creativity in this self-fulfilling circle. The other thing that's fascinating about creativity is the way it correlates to resilience, and as well as it correlates to a dimension called tolerance of ambiguity. And we're all feeling so uncertain and stressed in the last 18 months or so. If we're able to sit more with this ambiguity in the world and not knowing how things are going to turn out, then we can move forward with a bit more confidence. So those are a few personal things that it helps with. But on an organizational level, companies who are creative make more money. They have higher retention of their employees. Their employees are more engaged. There's higher team cohesion for teams that create together. And employees who create every day are half as likely to be looking for a new job. And they have up to 30% higher performance ratings than people who don't do anything creative. So it's one of those, to me, this like secret sauce. And, oh, not to mention, only 18% of people in a job feel like they can take the risks in their job to be creative. So everybody's wondering what the next magic bullet is. Like, hello.
You know what? I'm so glad you did that. And for some of those that have been watching me for a while, they may have heard a similar story. I was in corporate America for 12 years. It took me 11 years to figure out how to get out. Not that if corporate America is your deal or working for a bigger company is your deal, God bless you. It wasn't for me. I felt my creativity was kind of suppressed a bit. And I kept moving. I moved from one organization to another organization thinking grass greener type deal. I'd have more opportunity to be more creative. Eventually got into radio. And I thought when I first got there, I got to create my own little event. And I thought, man, this is fantastic. But oh my gosh, the lawyers we had to go through, the red tape. And so the next time I didn't even want to do it anymore. And long story longer, when I finished, They actually turned out to be one of my first clients in my my company. I was very honest and straightforward with them, and we just happened to part ways on really good terms, and they became a client. But that was the main thing, is I felt like I wasn't able to be creative enough. And it's almost because I'm such a huge fan of culture. I've never really thought about culture and how much creativity is involved in sustaining. Now, there's toxic culture, there's cultures, and there's fantastic cultures. And those fantastic cultures, a lot of creativity comes into that. And speaking of this, with everybody at home right now, part of the thing that I think makes a lot of people successful is, I've got my coffee cup, I've got my water, I can put this picture up there, I'm comfortable, I feel good. Now, I've been doing this since 2006, maybe it's a little unfair, but in some of the companies you go into, it's blue or it's gray, or it's, maybe you can't put a picture up, or it's a little tiny picture of your family, so you get a little piece of home, that kind of thing. And you look at the companies that are thriving, when you go into them, I don't say culture is all about bean bags and beer, because it's not. It has a lot to do about behavior, but the bean bags, the beer or whatever, you go into the kitchen with the free energy bar, like there's cool decorations going on. Like, I can see how that can be motivational to people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Your observations are spot on. And people have done research where they compare, for instance, people who are, and this is before remote work, but in an office situation, employees who were able to personalize their desks were, I think, 30% more creative. So this personalization of a desk space or a home area potentially is one of the things that is increasing creativity during the pandemic, because everybody's workspace now is personalized. So your observations are spot on. And in fact, Donald Ratner wrote a book called My Creative Space that I just read. And you know why I love it, Jamie?
Why?
It's because it's a book on creativity. He's an architect, so it sounds like it's a book on creative spaces like you're talking about, but it's actually a very comprehensive book on creativity. I loved it. And he quotes some of my favorite research, but it was funny. And oh my goodness, can you imagine how many boring books on creativity I've read, which is such an oxymoron.
It's not a very creative book.
I know. One of my favorite studies is a study on boredom, because boredom and creativity, and curiosity are all very intertwined. And I thought I couldn't help but giggle at the way the researchers had to find out like new and interesting ways to bore people.
I think that's fantastic. Well, boredom is definitely a criteria for not being creative in my mind. I feel too. And I'd really love to hear your feedback, especially since you're writing a book. And since you're writing a book, I think we have something in common right now that maybe we can talk about. And hopefully people that are listening can draw their own parallels to this. But in my case, when I first started writing, I sat around for a while just thinking, and nothing was happening. And I was sitting there, and now all of a sudden my deadline was coming up. I'm like, oh. And my wife said, Jamie, you got to write. You're stressed out. Everything went way business. It was affecting business, which is crazy, but it was affecting my life in general. And as soon as I started writing with that deadline there, I finally finished. I finished it. I turned in my last little thing a day late, but they let it slide. But I did. I literally wrote the book like in the span of probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I had 2 months. And that completely stifled me. After I was done with that, though, I'm first in my little group. There's 7 of us under this one revisions editor. I'm first in my group. I'm getting this done. I'm getting that done. Boy, it just started flowing. And it seemed like once I did that, I was like, oh, yeah, it's great. And now I have all these other projects going on. I'm like, I can do it. I'm doing it. This is fun. But there was that hump. And I'm worried that other people are that first 2 months of where I was, and never quite get over that hurdle. And therefore businesses fail, relationships fail, things like that fail. What are some maybe insights or some thoughts that you may be able to help others out that can, maybe find ways of not necessarily forcing creativity, but maybe embracing the suck to overcome? Yeah.
I love that. Embrace the side. Well, first I have a question for you. So do you have any concept, or do you know what was holding you back this first few months?
Fear of being a terrible writer.
Yeah.
Fear of putting something out there to people that they would say, this is ridiculous. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassing myself, thinking that, wow, what I'm doing here is so fantastic, and getting it out there, and people are going, no, not really.
Yeah.
Not really fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty. I think that's universal to everybody, no matter, and especially like, I don't want to make any assumptions. You said you're in corporate for 12 years. You're not like fresh out of school, and you probably got a bunch of competencies under your belt. You're probably good at what you do, and you probably feel competent for the most part. And I see so many other people mid-career, or even if they're not mid-career, just they've developed the skill set and they've lost the ability to suck at something. Really. And I talk about there's two layers of judgment that hold us back from being creative. The first one is our internal judgment, like, oh, this is stupid and this is dumb and that's a bad idea. And then the external fear of judgment, which is, what are other people going to think of me? And I think that's the number one thing that holds us back from everything in life. I'm a big fan of the book by Bronnie Ware, where she was a hospice nurse, I think. And she,
talk to everybody right about the last weeks and regrets.
Yes, the regrets of the dying. And the top regret was living a life that was for somebody else and not myself. And we sit in these little boxes. I call it box sitting chicken. So it's like we sit in all these boxes looking around at all these other people sitting in boxes, and nobody wants to be there, but we're waiting for somebody else to be the first one to jump out of that box. And sometimes it has to be you. And that's what creativity helps with, because when you see somebody who is out there sharing their deepest creative soul with the world, it's very vulnerable. Like, you can't imagine back when we were like in tribes, if we were excluded or rejected from the tribe, we would die. So we feel rejection from others as deeply as we feel physical pain. It's a strong motivator to keep us to toe the status quo. And when people find out I do stand-up comedy, they say, oh, that's my worst nightmare. I could never do that. It's terrifying. And I do a lot of what I call objective risk assessment. And I'm like, but really, why? Unless this is a local joke, but unless I'm in Red Deer, which is, a town near me, I'm probably not going to die if I do stand-up comedy. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? People won't laugh. Although you tell it to a comic, I told some of my comic friends once, it was a big show and I was a bit nervous. And I said, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? No one will laugh. And they were horrified. They said, how could you say that? That's the worst thing that could happen. I'm like, no, the worst thing could be that I would die. So I think a lot of it is like being able to sit in that uncertainty and that, like you said, that fear of failure, and think, but what is failure really? Like a bunch of strangers that are drunk that don't like my jokes, like really, that's not a huge risk, honestly. So I do a lot of like objective risk assessment, which is, I think, the number one thing that can help you get over that fear of being creative. Because, like, as an example, I'm also an entrepreneur. I had a few businesses, and I had a jewelry business while I was still working as a vet. And I never told anybody at my vet clinics that I worked at that I had this jewelry business. I'm like, oh, they're going to think it's weird. Like, that's a weird thing for a vet to do, have a jewelry business. So I didn't talk about it. And then, I started talking about it more because I started taking small risks. And like you said, once you take a small risk, it gives you more energy and more confidence to take more risks. So even if you just sing in the shower or sing for your kids and you think, then the next time you do something at work, it's like a muscle you build. But getting back to the business with the jewelry business, I realized once I started sharing about my jewelry business and my stand-up comedy, some people thought it was weird, whatever. But most people were like, oh, that's so amazing. And I have this other creative thing that I've always wanted to do, or that I used to do, and it gave me so much happiness. I don't really know why I stopped doing it. And it motivated them to take small risks, to be creative, or to do something they've been looking to do. So I think that, what you're doing and sharing your journey and saying it was hard for me to start. And once I started, it was great. And I'm sure your book is going to be fantastic. So, and if it isn't, who cares?
Hey,
really?
You know what? And no matter what, you're going to have the haters, you're going to have the fans, you're going to have the people that really don't care. And that's just knowing your audience. And yeah, I guess I have somewhat thick skin. I'm 51. I've been around a little bit. I've fallen. I kind of low crawled for a while. I fell again. I created all that chaos myself, but I've learned a couple things. And I'm still afraid, but what I have learned to do, and I had to practice what I preached at this because I tell other people to do this. And even before I had that little 2-month block, is you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you're ever going to be putting yourself in a new situation, because there's unfamiliarity. You said, like building a muscle. And now after talking with you, that's 100% a circle, going around creativity. That's exactly what being uncomfortable is. It's creating, I think, now that we're having this conversation, culture is creating systems, creating all of that. And there's the rewards that you get. I always say you have to take care of your own backyard, not only financially, but creatively. Holy cow. Yeah. What you're just saying, it's just, if I'm not being creative, who cares what else is going on out there? Because if I can't be creative and be happy and make a random dinner or do whatever, something a little bit unique or different, how can I help others?
Well, and how are you any different than the robots that are replacing the jobs that don't need that creativity as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's the year of the robot.
Yeah. And I totally agree with this idea of the discomfort of being uncomfortable. And I think it goes through all of life, like any entrepreneur, any business owner. You know, I am trying to do one of these couch to 5K things, and it's kicking my butt a little bit. And I ran just before our meeting, and I was like, oh, this is so hard. And I think I didn't know it was her, but I think it's Glennon Doyle who does this, like, I can do hard things, you know. And in the winter, I cross country ski here, and sometimes I'll ski like 20, 25 kilometers and, you know, quite steep. And I'm just like, all I keep thinking is, you know, I can do hard things. My body gives out. No, my mind gives out before my body does. That's what I always say to myself, because, you know, we kind of convince ourselves of this like complacency of comfort, like you're talking about. And it's what we're all missing. People are like, there's something missing. I just don't know what it is. And whether it's the discomfort of creativity or the discomfort of, like you said, it's all creative. Creating a new future is creativity.
It really is. And speaking of a bit of an analogy, I still play hockey to this day. I know you played hockey, but I play 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the week. But what's really nice is when I go play hockey, I always say my mind is writing checks my body can't cash. I think I could be better, but my body's trying to get it. But what I like about it is when I'm there. Like, yeah. I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about passing or the next shot or, you know, changing up or doing whatever. And that, to me, it fuels my creativity based on our conversation today. But it just motivates me to do things because I kind of shut down from all that external noise. Yeah. And I really think it's important for people to find you cross-country ski or you run or like there's some kind of physical activity, I believe, has a lot to do with creativity. Is there any science behind that?
Yeah, well, with the physical activity, a lot of people are creative, and we're talking about divergent creativity, new ideas, when they're walking. So Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, very famous walking people. And part of that is because when we are exercising our divergent creativity, which is like the what if thinking, what are the possibilities? One of the things that hijacks that is our analytical thinking, like that's a dumb idea, that'll never work brain. And so if you do a task, so the shower or going for a walk or something physical, you're actually distracting part of your brain. So you can kind of trick it into like letting those ideas get through in some way.
I love that.
Yeah. So doing something like that, distracting you, is good. And I'm sure it has something to do with like muscle, like blood flow and things like that. But one of the things that that came to mind when you're talking about your experience with hockey is it's a very mindful experience. It sounds like for you, like you're in the moment. And what's funny is there's quite a bit of research around meditation and creativity. And traditional meditation, which is kind of focusing on your breath or focusing on one thing, is actually negatively correlated with creativity, because creativity is like, what are all the possibilities? And mindful meditation is like focusing on one thing. But what the meditation does, and that what mindfulness does, is it gives space for the creativity. because now that you're in the moment, you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking about the past, you're only in the moment. And so your storylines about like what should be or what has happened is diminished. So it's in a weird paradox. It's negatively correlated with creativity, but at the same time, it allows your creativity to bloom because you're sitting in that ambiguity and sitting in the moment.
Oh, it's kind of like deleting some of those files that you don't need on your computer anymore.
Yeah. So there's no history, right? There's no like, you just allowed to just sit in that moment. And one of the things that also is connected with that is this sense of awe. And maybe you've had that if you score a goal or something. But if we can experience awe, whether it's like seeing a dandelion push up through a pavement, it makes us feel really small, but still connected to the world. And it makes us more confident in facing any uncertainty that comes our way. So this feeling with awe combined with like a mindfulness are really, really strong tools to be able to make good decisions or to be able to sit in that discomfort so you don't knee jerk. Like when we're feeling uncertain, we choose a status quo solution almost always. So if you have the power to sit without jumping to like that solution, then you can start to see other possibilities. And we don't know we're doing it. It's unconscious.
Wow. Yeah, I love this. So I really didn't see creativity in this way before.
I know. It's so exciting. This is why I'm like, there's too much to talk about.
Well, that's fantastic. So if someone wants to learn more, how do they get in touch with you? How do they reach out to you?
Well, since I speak about creativity, they could send me a carrier pigeon. Or I actually have looked that up. Like, could I send someone a carrier pigeon, as a fun message? And stand by on that one.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But you can definitely find me here on LinkedIn. Caroline Brookfield. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And I think I have some videos on YouTube on my channel as well. But you can find me any of those places and send me an email at hello@carolinebrookfield.com, which is my website. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on creativity and how you think creativity might help your team or yourself get better results in an uncertain world.
I love it. So where is someone who is like the perfect person to call you that you could offer the most benefit to?
Yeah, I think, Jamie, it's somebody who knows something's not quite right, that they know something's missing, but they're open to possibility. Someone who's locked up tight in their box that really has no interest in seeing a different way is probably not going to be open to creativity. But somebody who's willing to take a little risk, who really wants to make something different and have different results in their life is somebody that I think I can help.
And where are they in their life journey? Like, is this someone just fresh out of college? Is this an executive that's doing something? Is this an entrepreneur that's maybe, can't maybe get to the next level and wants to, but doesn't? I don't know.
Yes. I know this is terrible. It's one of the things I should know who I'm speaking to, but I think it's more about like the psychology of knowing that you want to do something different. Like for me, there was always, as a vet, I love being a vet, but there was always that something like, this is not it for me. Like, I know maybe you had that in a corporate experience. I know this is not it for me. Like, what else is there? And just taking the risks and taking small steps. So somebody who's in mid-career is often someone feeling that way. Like, what, I talk about that, the ladder of success, and we kind of climb the ladder away from the smelly exhaust, but then we get to the roof and it still stinks and there's no pina colada and deck chair. And you're like, why, this is supposed to be good.
It's not all pink elephants and lemonade.
Exactly. And that, like, what is missing? And often I find that it's something creative, and that could be different for everybody. It doesn't mean painting. It could be, a lot of it is tied to like taking small risks and lifelong learning and just minimizing that judgment in our heads to allow ourselves to express ourselves.
Last thing, because this just popped into my mind when you were saying that, I thought about painting dinner, but anything about like brushing my teeth. I normally do it right-handed. I switched to left hand. I've heard that helps creativity. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, what that makes me think of is David Eagleman's work on Live Wired. He's a neuroscientist. It's a great book, and he talks about neuroplasticity, and that's what that makes me think of. So if you get into, I do this great lecture for my kids, and they love it. And so they love video games, 2 boys. And I say, if you only play video, so imagine you have a fun palace in your brain, and you're in the deep winter and thick snow, and you only have one path to the Fun Palace, and that's video games, then you're really only going to be able to get to the Fun Palace through that one path. But you need to build many, many different paths to the Fun Palace so that if one's blocked, you can go to the other one. And so that's, to me, what I think of neuroplasticity, which is we get stuck in these ruts and we walk these trails in the deep snow in our brain. And by switching to another hand, you're actually changing your brain. You physically change your brain when you do something different. I do the same thing. I do, like, you know, when I'm doing anything, like normally I would use my one hand, and I try to force myself to use the other one. And I think that helps with creativity, because part of how we create these insights and great ideas is through what's called the default mode network. And not to get too technical, but that's kind of when we're thinking about nothing. That's the daydreaming state. And when we feel like we're doing nothing, which is like by daydreaming, our brain is like super active. And it's like a universe of stars. So the more experiences and the more connections you can make, the more disparate ideas your brain will collect from to come up with like a very unique insight. But
what's that called again?
What's that? The default mode network.
Default mode network. Okay.
Yeah. So it's they found it by accident, which is funny. So they wanted, so a researcher was like comparing task A and task B and needed a control. So he said, okay, well, just think about nothing. That'll be our control. But what they found when they were looking at the brain, the fMRI scans, is that when they were thinking about nothing, their brain was much more active than when they were doing either of the tasks. Wow. So we don't feel it, but our brain is super active. So to get back to your teeth brushing example, when you're changing your hands, you're building new connections and giving your brain new ingredients. And so that when you're daydreaming one day, you might have an amazing epiphany, which you don't even realize had something to do with you brushing your teeth with your left hand, because it's not conscious, which is the wonderful thing about it. But it's hard to assign an ROI to that, right?
Yeah, it really is. Oh, yeah, but it's interesting because I don't know if I achieve any immediate results or have, oh my gosh, I just thought of this incredible idea because I brushed my teeth with my left hand instead of my right hand. But it's an interesting exercise to go through because you're concentrating differently, and you know, something is happening. You're like, oh, this is kind of weird or something like that. I don't know.
Well, you should read his book or follow his material. Like, they do all kinds of things. Like, there's people who are building like gloves you can wear, and the gloves will vibrate when you feel an electromagnetic field.
Oh, really?
So it's giving people like a sixth sense. And they have people who are blind, who are sighted and then become blind. They actually, their visual cortex starts doing different things. So they're actually seeing, but through a different sense. Wow. So like, it's amazing how our brain changes in response to our inputs, in response to like what we ask it to do. And we're lazy. We just want to do what's always worked. So it goes back to that discomfort that you were talking about. If we want our brain to continue to grow, we need to continually put it in a bit of discomfort, which is learning to do something new, like brushing your teeth with your left hand.
I love it. I love it. So quickly before we wrap up, again, thank you so much, Caroline. You deserve doctor, so you worked hard for that.
My evil medical school training.
Is there anything that you would like to leave us with creativity before we wrap?
I think the number one thing is for everybody to know that you are creative. Everybody is creative. It's a biological fact. The same way that you are able to breathe, I hope, if you're watching this video, you can be creative in your own way. It doesn't mean it has to be good. You get the same benefits of being creative if you're really bad at something. So go sing, go draw something, go make that meal from a country you've never been to before, and you'll be amazed at the benefits.
Go dance as if no one's looking.
Dance as if, you know what? I changed it though. I'm like, dance as if everybody's watching, looking. And you just don't care.
What is wrong with that person? They are being creative.
Exactly. What's the worst that can happen?
I love it. Yeah. What is the worst that can happen? Holy cow. Well, thank you so much. Do you have just a moment to where I can wrap up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a very fun, fascinating conversation. and I'll say Caroline Brookfield, but it's Dr. Caroline Brookfield. She earned it. She deserves it. Had an incredible conversation with her, and I hope you get a chance to reach out to her. We talked about creativity, the number one skill you need that you already have. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can be creative, whether it's making dinner, painting a picture, brushing your teeth left-handed, whatever it is. Do something new that challenges you to take you from that being comfortable to uncomfortable area. And I think it's so true that you're much happier when you're creative versus when you're not creative, when you're more sedentary, when you're not really doing anything or challenging or pushing the envelope. Life tends to gray out on you a bit, at least in my experience. And I really appreciated this conversation. So by all means, go check it out. You can learn more by going to carolinebrookfield.com. Caroline Brookfield is a speaker and a veterinarian of artful science. You can also email her, hello@carolinebrookfield.com. She's on LinkedIn. She's on Instagram. And keep checking back, because I have a feeling The Reluctant Creative, or some variation thereof, her new book, will be landing soon, and that's going to be a fun read for sure. So let me go ahead and wrap up here. If you haven't got a chance to see this yet, go check out Bottleneck Television. You go right to bottleneck.online/TV, or you can go to bottleneck.online/BTV for Bottleneck Television. Technically, it's our YouTube channel, but we like to have fun with that. You can go check out episodes just like this. There's hundreds of them there. We also do special episodes, tutorials and things like that. I even do an unboxing of our Bottleneck shoes that we got. Pretty goofy stuff. And yes, indeed, I am writing a book. It's called Quit Repeating Yourself. It's all about building a sustainable growth and a positive culture into your business model. No, this is not the cover. This is a test cover. So we have people that have backed the book during an Indiegogo campaign. It is now over. However, we're going to be choosing the book cover soon, and the book will be out on bookshelves in September. So we're really, really excited about that. Coming soon, coming soon to your earbuds, I should say. We're talking about sales credibility, how buyers qualify you. C. Lee Smith, the CEO of Sales Fuel, is going to be talking with us Tuesday, June 1st at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Please join us for that one. That's going to be loaded with tons of incredible conversations about how to build your business through sustainable sales efforts. And so without any further ado, I'll go ahead and wrap up. I really like saying without any further ado. I think that's the fourth time I've said it, actually. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, create your own ripple.